I was reborn at the moment I fell into the ice cave, but unlike my past life, Xiaoji did not jump in to save me. As I screamed for help, he only shot me a cold glance before turning and walking away without a backward look. The instant I sank beneath the water, I watched him push through the crowd and pull my half-sister into his arms. His trembling figure betrayed the overwhelming joy of having her back. At that moment, I knew Xiaoji had been reborn too. My rebirth came at the worst possible time, precisely when I was tumbling into the freezing ice cave. In my previous life, Xiaoji had rushed in without a second thought, hauling me out of the water and clutching me tightly, terrified that I would die. Because of this incident, Xiaoji had hated my half-sister with a vengeance. After all, it was she who had insisted on dragging me ice skating, leading to my fall. After I fell into the water, I lay bedridden for 3 long years. During those 3 years, racked with guilt, my half-sister had waited on me hand and foot, but Xiaoji had never spared her a kind look. Every time he saw her, he would sneer and shout, as if he wanted to kill her on the spot to vent his anger. Though my family and Xiaoji had taken the best possible care of me during my illness, my fragile body had finally given out. After I died, my spirit did not depart immediately. Instead, I lingered in the mortal world, wandering aimlessly. I saw that in the 2nd year after my death, my half-sister had voluntarily entered the Xiao mansion as a maid to atone for her sins. No matter how humiliated Xiaoji made her, she refused to leave, taking meticulous care of his daily needs. A year later, Xiaoji had gone hunting and deliberately left her stranded in the snow-sealed woods for 2 whole hours. By the time he returned, she was freezing to death, on the verge of breathing her last. Just as I was thinking that Xiaoji had gone too far, he suddenly came charging back like a madman. He leaped off his horse, stumbled toward her, and gathered her into his arms tightly. In his bloodshot eyes glistening with tears, there was nothing but regret and the wild excitement of having her back again. At that moment, I finally understood. During the long years he had spent torturing her, Xiaoji had fallen hopelessly in love with my half-sister. A bone-chilling gust of wind blew past. Xiaoji wrapped his heavy cloak tightly around my half-sister, while I, caught in that same bitter wind, dissolved into a wisp of green smoke and vanished from the mortal world forever. When I opened my eyes again, my body was still racked with a piercing cold, but this cold was different from the icy grip of death I had felt in my past life. I could feel it, sharp and real. I struggled, my mind muddled, as the realization hit me. I had been reborn. Reborn at the exact moment when my half-sister had dragged me ice skating and I had fallen into the ice cave. I saw Xiaoji, like everyone else on the shore watching the spectacle. He stared coldly at me as I thrashed about, fighting for my life. Then, he gave me that same frigid look and turned to leave. He walked quickly, as if searching for something, and then, I watched him push aside the people blocking his path and sweep my half-sister into his arms. His shoulders trembled with emotion. Even though I could not see his face, I knew without a doubt that at this moment, he was overcome with excitement and joy. I understood now, Xiaoji had been reborn too. In this life, he had chosen to abandon me and to save my half-sister instead. As my consciousness slipped into total darkness, I screamed toward the shore, my voice hoarse and desperate. I'll give 100 taels of silver to whoever saves me. 2. When I woke up again, 3 days had passed, just like in my past life. My mother sat weeping by my bedside. Once so meticulous about her appearance, she now looked disheveled, her hair messy and her clothes wrinkled. A sharp pain stabbed at my heart. I croaked out a single word, "Mother." My mother burst into tears of joy, throwing her arms around me, laughing and crying at the same time. My eldest brother returned with the imperial physician. The doctor said my body was far too weak. I must rest well and avoid any further exposure to the cold or fatigue. I smiled and nodded. In this life, I would be stronger-willed, more determined. I would fight to live longer. Father rushed back from the government office in a flurry, his official hat askew on his head. Despite the bitter winter cold, he was sweating profusely from the run. My Jiao Jiao is safe, that's all that matters. Father choked up, patting my hand gently. Wife, tomorrow I'll accompany you to the temple to fulfill our vow. We'll have a golden statue of the Buddha made. My mother nodded. Smiling through her tears, I sighed quietly to myself. In my past life, after I died, Mother had also fallen gravely ill, consumed by grief. Her health had deteriorated day by day. Father, not yet 40, had resigned from his official post and returned to our hometown to take care of her, but he had been held in high regard by the emperor, with a brilliant future ahead of him. After father and mother left the capital, my eldest brother had stayed behind alone. Though he had worked diligently and conscientiously, his official career had stagnated. Within a few years, his spirit broken, he too had returned to our hometown. Father, I said, smiling softly, use my money. I want to personally commission the golden Buddha statue. In this life, I would fight tooth and nail to survive. Of course, Jiao Jiao, father replied, his eyes warm with affection. Using your money will show the Buddha your sincerity. It will surely bless you with good health and a long life, elder sister. My half-sister Shu Rong stepped into the room, her eyes still glistening with tears. She approached my bed guiltily, knelt down, and kowtowed repeatedly. It's all my fault. Please hit me, scold me, do whatever you want. Mother's face instantly darkened. How dare you come here and apologize, she snapped, her voice icy with rage. I suspect you did this on purpose. You planned to kill Jiao Jiao. Without a moment's hesitation, Mother raised her hand and slapped Shu Rong hard across the face. Shu Rong stumbled backward, falling to the floor, but she quickly scrambled back to her knees, sobbing as she begged for forgiveness. Mother had always hated Shu Rong, or rather, she hated Shu Rong's mother. Mother had been born into a military family. Though not one of the most powerful aristocratic clans, they had wielded great influence in the northwest. Father, on the other hand, had come from a humble scholarly background. He had entered a private school funded by my maternal grandfather when he was only 10 years old. Growing up alongside Mother, they were childhood sweethearts. After their marriage, they had been deeply in love. But one year, when Father had been sent on an official mission, Mother had been pregnant with me and unable to accompany him. So she had sent her most trusted maid, Suejuan, to take care of him. No one could have predicted what would happen next. Suejuan had drugged Father's wine. When Mother found out the truth, she had been 7 months pregnant with me. The shock had caused her to go into premature labor, and I had been born weak and frail. By the time Mother had recovered slightly, Suejuan, who had been locked up in the backyard, was already pregnant with Shu Rong. In the end, Mother's kind heart had prevailed. She had spared both Suejuan and her unborn child. But from that day on, Mother had never laid eyes on Suejuan again. Whenever she saw Shu Rong, she would speak to her with cold disdain, never showing her an ounce of kindness. Guards, Mother shouted, her fury flaring anew at the thought of how close I had come to death. A single slap had not been nearly enough to vent her anger. Dragged Suejuan and her daughter out of this house and sell them as servants now. Father had always felt guilty about what had happened with Suejuan. At that moment, he did not dare to utter a single word in their defense, but I knew what would happen next. In my past life, Father had eventually begged Mother to spare Suejuan and Shu Rong's lives. Though Mother had reluctantly agreed, she had quarreled fiercely with him afterward. Their relationship strained beyond repair. Tormented by guilt and frustration, Father had gotten drunk one night, on his way home. Suejuan had waylaid him, helping him stagger into her room. If Mother had not found out and rushed over with her servants, I might have ended up with another half-brother that night. After that incident, the rift between Father and Mother had deepened further. For a long time, Mother had refused to speak to him. Mother, I said, raising my voice to cut through Shu Rong's sobs, it wasn't intentional. Please don't blame her anymore. Shu Rong froze, her head snapping up to look at me. Her tear-filled eyes were wide with stunned disbelief. Father, meanwhile, turned away, a look of relief silently crossing his face. You're far too kind-hearted, Mother said, her voice tinged with frustration. Defending her even at a time like this, I was not being kind-hearted, I was being pragmatic. Shu Rong now had the backing of Xiao Ji, the heir to the Boyang Marquisate. There was no way we could sell her into servitude. If we pushed this matter further, we would not only drive Father away but also incur Xiao Ji's wrath. If I wanted to take revenge on Shu Rong and claim her life, there were far better ways to do it. 3. In my past life, I had always believed Xu Rong was innocent, even when Xiaoji had insisted time and again that she had deliberately harmed me. I had defended her fiercely, speaking up for her at every turn. It was not until after I died, when Xu Rong had entered the Xiao mansion as a maid, that I had finally seen the truth. I had caught her holding my belongings, a look of cold, vicious hatred twisting her features. Only then did I realize how completely I had been deceived. Her scheming, her patience, her ruthless tactics, they were far beyond anything I, a sheltered young lady raised in the seclusion of the inner chambers, could ever have imagined. She had known that Xiaoji loved me, no matter what tricks she used. She knew he would never spare her a second glance, so she had plotted my fall into the ice cave. Born prematurely, I had been weak and sickly since childhood, falling into the freezing cold water in the dead of winter. Even if I had survived, I would never have lived a long life, and sure enough, everything had gone exactly according to her plan. She had used me as a pawn, manipulating every step of the way, until she had finally achieved her heart's desire. Her true intentions had been hidden so deeply, not even Xiaoji had ever suspected the truth. This time around, I had refused to let Xu Rong wait on me during my recovery, unlike in my past life, so for the past half-month, she had only visited me once, but her absence was not because she had grown tired of playing the role of the guilt-stricken younger sister. It was because she had been far too busy sneaking around to meet Xiaoji in secret. A month later, I was practicing horse stance in the courtyard when my wet nurse came rushing over to report what she had seen. I saw the Marquis's heir meeting Xu Rong in private, she said, her voice trembling with indignation. Oh, I replied casually, focusing all my energy on maintaining my balance, not daring to falter for even a moment. Song Shiqing let out a disdainful snort. Don't move. I said you'd hold this pose for a cup of tea's time, not a second less. I shot him a glare. Cut me some slack. Do you really think you're my master? Song Shiqing was my maternal uncle's adopted son. He had been raised in the Northwest, and I had often visited there as a child. We had grown up as close as blood siblings. He had joined the military camp with my uncle when he was 15 years old. This time, he had been granted 3 months of leave and had come all the way to the capital just to see me. But I had immediately roped him into teaching me martial arts, determined to strengthen my frail body. Now, he was taking his role as my master far too seriously, ordering me around relentlessly every day, never allowing me to slouch or take a break. Miss, the wet nurse said, her face flushed with anger. The Marquis's heir, he was clearly so fond of you before. How could he suddenly turn around and take up with Xu Rong? The Marquis's heir is a grown man, I said, shrugging my shoulders nonchalantly. He can like whoever he wants. Wet nurse, instead of worrying about his love life, why don't you think about what we're having for dinner? I'm starving. The wet nurse huffed in frustration, but Song Shiqing chuckled and said, don't listen to her, wet nurse. Let her go hungry for a meal, it'll teach her a lesson. The wet nurse burst out laughing, her anger forgotten, and bustled off happily to the kitchen. So you've been moping around these past few days because Xiaoji dumped you for your half-sister? Song Shiqing asked, raising an eyebrow at me. I haven't been moping, I retorted, gritting my teeth as my legs began to tremble with fatigue. You've had a permanent frown on your face, he pointed out, amused. Please, I said, rolling my eyes. I'm frowning because certain people are taking their role as master way too seriously. I'm annoyed, not sad. Song Shiqing looked incredibly pleased with himself, reaching out to flick my forehead lightly. Good disciple. Keep practicing hard. Your master won't steer you wrong. Song Shiqing, I gasped. My legs finally giving out, I toppled backward, but Song Shiqing reacted instantly. Catching me easily in one arm, Master Song, I whined, leaning lazily against his arm, determined to slack off for a while. Let me rest for an hour, just 1 hour, please. A faint flush crept up Song Shiqing's cheeks. He glared at me, but there was no real anger in his eyes. Nice try. Flattery won't get you anywhere. Your master is immune to your charms. I was about to protest further when a voice suddenly cut through the air from the side of the courtyard. Elder sister, cousin Song, what are you two doing? I quickly pulled away from Song Shiqing's arm and turned around. There, standing behind us, were Xu Rong and Xiao Ji, neither of them looking particularly happy. "Are you practicing martial arts?" Xu Rong asked. Her voice sweet and innocent as she looked between us. "You two are still as close as you were when you were children. It's so nice to see." Xiao Ji said nothing, but his face was as dark and stormy as the overcast sky above, his eyes blazing with an unreadable emotion. For Song Shiqing spotted Xiao Ji and raised an eyebrow. Leaning close to my ear, he whispered, "Want me to beat him up for you? Blow off some steam?" I shot him a glare. "Don't stir up trouble. The only one who'll end up embarrassed is me. People would just think I was throwing a jealous fit." Song Shiqing twitched the corner of his mouth, casting a disdainful glance at Xiao Ji. "Elder sister," Xu Rong called out to me. Only then did I remember Xiao Ji and Xu Rong were still standing there. I asked casually, "Did you two come here for something?" Xu Rong glanced at Xiao Ji, whose face had darkened even further, and said awkwardly, "The Marquis's heir and I came to check on you. We were worried you weren't recovering well, but it seems we were overthinking it. You look even more energetic than before. Thank you for your concern. I really am doing much better now." I waved a hand dismissively and turned to head back with Song Shiqing. "Wait." Xiao Ji, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke up. He frowned at Song Shiqing, his voice sharp with reproach. "Her constitution is inherently weak. Resting in peace is the best way for her to recover. Making her practice these martial arts will only overtax her body and worsen her condition." When he finished speaking, both Song Shiqing and Xu Rong stared at him in surprise. I lowered my eyes, a cold laugh echoing in my heart. Was Xiao Ji feeling guilty? To be honest, I didn't resent him for choosing Xu Rong over me in this life. He had every right to make his own choice, but the way he had watched me struggle to death with that cold, indifferent look in his eyes that had truly chilled me to the bone. "You really got nothing better to do, huh? Marquis's heir," Song Shiqing scoffed. "First of all, I would never harm her, and second of all, what her body does is none of your damn business." Song Shiqing had never been one to mince his words. When he finished, Xiao Ji's face turned an even deeper shade of livid. "Jiao Jiao," Xiao Ji said, turning to me, his voice softening, "you won't listen to me. But at least you should listen to the imperial physician. You can't treat your body like this." I turned to look at him, my gaze steady. "I'm not mistreating my body. In fact, the imperial physician said my training is doing me a world of good." Xiao Ji froze, staring at me in shock, as if he couldn't believe I was being so cold and distant toward him. His reaction struck me as utterly ridiculous. I didn't want to look at either of them for another second. Grabbing Song Shiqing's arm, I pulled him away. Behind us, I heard Xu Rong's voice, thick with tears. "Brother Ji cares more about elder sister's health than I do. As her younger sister, I'm truly such a failure. It's not your fault. Stop blaming yourself." Xiao Ji comforted her, his tone gentle and reassuring. "Let her do as she pleases. She's an adult now, she should take responsibility for her own actions." Then I heard Xiao Ji pat Xu Rong's head affectionately. "Didn't you want to take me to see the plum blossoms? Let's go." I rolled my eyes so hard I almost saw the back of my head. How had I never noticed in my past life just how skilled Xu Rong was at her passive-aggressive schemes, and how frivolous Xiao Ji could be in his actions? In my previous life, even though we had loved each other, Xiao Ji had always been a proper, upright gentleman, self-disciplined and respectful of all decorum. Never once had he embraced me in public like he had embraced Xu Rong the day I fell into the ice cave. Not even in private had he ever dared to touch me inappropriately. So he and Xu Rong were truly in love. Then, so in love that they couldn't control themselves. Casting all etiquette aside, a memory suddenly surfaced from my past life. Around this same time, Song Shiqing had also come back to visit. He had told me to get up and move around more, saying that even a perfectly healthy person would waste away if they lay in bed all day. But back then, I had lacked the willpower to push myself. It had been too exhausting to move, and Xiao Ji had opposed it too, urging me to follow the physician's orders and rest, so I had happily stayed in bed, feeling no guilt whatsoever. Because of this, Song Shiqing had gotten into a fight with Xiao Ji. I had defended Xiao Ji, yelling at Song Shiqing until he was furious. He had called me stupid and lazy, then stormed off, refusing to have anything more to do with me. After that, I never saw Song Shiqing again, not until I died, but I had heard news of him from my eldest brother from time to time. Cousin, I said, setting down my teacup and frowning, when your leave is over, are you going to the northwest border camp under General Guo to gain experience? Yeah, why? Song Shiqing looked up from polishing his sword, his eyes curious. Don't go to General Guo's camp. In my past life, he had left my uncle's military camp to train under General Guo. But he had refused to submit to General Guo's authority, not only getting into a fight with him but also writing a memorial to the emperor, impeaching the general for his misconduct. I didn't know all the details, but I remembered that in the end, he had gotten the short end of the stick. He had been flogged 80 times with a military rod and stripped of all his military ranks. I don't even want to go, Song Shiqing muttered, his face darkening. That old codger Guo rang, then don't go. Do you hear me? Song Shiqing nodded, agreeing readily. Got it, I won't go. With that, he turned and walked away. The next day, I heard that Xiaoji had been doused with a bucket of night soil. He had dodged most of it, but still ended up covered in filth, reeking to high heaven. As I practiced my boxing that day, I watched Song Shiqing carefully, trying to trick him into admitting he was the one who'd done it, but he was too shrewd, not letting a single word slip. I know I'm devastatingly handsome, but you don't have to stare at me like that. I rolled my eyes. Thanks to my daily boxing practice, I hadn't lost any weight. In fact, I'd gained 2 jin. My parents said my complexion had improved dramatically, and even the imperial physician praised my rapid recovery. One day, Song Shiqing and I were lazing around in my eldest brother's room. The two of them were standing over me, supervising as I drank my medicinal herbs. When Xiaoji showed up uninvited, the atmosphere turned awkward in an instant. I didn't want to stay a moment longer, so I prepared to finish my medicine and leave quickly. I frowned, grimacing at the bitter taste of the herbs. Song Shiqing chuckled. You're wrinkling your face like an old woman. I glared at him, and then suddenly, a candied fruit appeared in front of my eyes. Xiaoji actually carried the candied fruits I loved to eat with him. Seeing that I didn't reach out to take it, Xiaoji held it out to me again, his voice soft. Forgot to bring candied fruits again. Didn't you? Lucky for you. I have some here. I frowned. 5. Song Shiqing shot me a warning look, as if he would chop off my hand on the spot if I dared to take the candied fruit from Xiaoji. I glared back at him, then turned to Xiaoji and said coldly, Thank you, Marquis's heir. But I don't need candied fruits to take my medicine. In my past life, I had always complained about how bitter the medicinal herbs were, demanding candied fruits every time I took them. So every time Xiaoji came to visit me, he had always brought some along, because I loved them so much. He had even consulted the kitchen maids and made a whole box of them for me himself. Back then, every candied fruit that touched my lips had tasted extra sweet, but in this life, I no longer needed candied fruits to mask the bitterness. Bitterness was also a flavor. There was no need to avoid it deliberately. As my mother always said, life was made up of all kinds of flavors, both sweet and bitter. Xiaoji's face fell, and he clenched the candied fruit tightly in his palm, his expression filled with disappointment. Suddenly, I felt a wave of weariness wash over me. Saying I was going back to rest, I got up and walked out of the study. After taking a dozen steps, I heard footsteps behind me. Xiaoji called out to me, his voice urgent. Jiao Jiao, Marquis's heir. I replied without turning around, my tone icy. Our relationship isn't nearly close enough for you to call me by my private name. It would be more appropriate for you to address me as Miss Xu. Xiaoji froze again, as if he wanted to say something to explain himself. But just as he was about to open his mouth, Xu Rong came floating over from the other side of the courtyard. Brother Ji. Xu Rong said, looking up at him with blushing cheeks, her eyes filled with shyness. Did you come here today for that matter? Xiaoji shot me a deep, meaningful look, then turned to Xu Rong, his voice softening into a gentle caress. Yes, I'm waiting for Lord Xu to return from the Yamen. Xu Rong smiled brightly, her eyes sparkling with joy. You're so kind, Brother Ji. I couldn't be bothered to watch their sickeningly sweet display any longer. Quickening my pace, I walked away. That night, I heard my parents arguing loudly. I hurried over to mediate, and when I entered the main courtyard, I saw Shu Rong and her mother kneeling on the ground. I ignored them completely, walking straight into the main hall. As soon as I stepped inside, I heard my mother's voice, sharp with anger. Shu Junyi, you humiliated me once, and now you want to humiliate me again. If you want to register Shu Rong under my name as my legitimate daughter, you'll have to wait until I'm dead, as long as I'm alive. Don't even dream of it. My father's face turned bright red with embarrassment under my mother's scolding. When he saw me walk in, he heaved a huge sigh of relief, looking at me with pleading eyes for the first time. Father, I said with a smile, elder brother and cousin are back. They said they have something important to tell you. Oh, right, I'll go see them right away. My father wasted no time. Hurrying out of the hall as if he were fleeing for his life, I helped my mother sit down. Leaning close to her ear and whispering softly, Mother, just promise father for now, agree to his request. I can't swallow this humiliation. My mother fumed, her voice trembling with rage. That maid I grew up with, I treated her like my own sister, bearing my heart and soul to her. But I never imagined she would stab me in the back like this. I'll never get over this, not even when I'm on my deathbed. She thinks her daughter can become a legitimate daughter and then marry into a powerful family. She'll have to see if she has the luck for it first. Mother, I whispered again, pressing my lips to her ear. I'm not asking you to agree to this for her sake. I'm asking you to do it to keep father on our side. Leave the rest to me. I'll handle it. I didn't want my parents' marriage to be torn apart because of those two scheming women. As for Shu Rong's fate, we didn't need to dirty our hands by taking her life. In this life, every step she took was leading her straight toward her own doom. My mother did as I told her. After that, Shu Rong and her mother became increasingly arrogant and bold. Concubine Yarrow even hired a seamstress to come to the house and make her new clothes, choosing colors that she never would have dared to wear before. She thinks she's worthy of wearing those colors. My wet nurse spat disdainfully. All right, calm down, I said, pulling her to sit down beside me. Did you take care of the errand I asked you to do? You can always count on me, miss. It's all taken care of perfectly. A few days later, the news that Xiaoji was consorting with the illegitimate daughter of a mere third-rank official reached the ears of the Marquisess of Boyang. She flew into a rage and had Xiaoji tied up and dragged back to the mansion. The Marquisess was personally conferred the title of County Lord of Anyang by the Emperor. She had lived a life of privilege and luxury, and was arrogant to her core. In my past life, she had looked down on even me, a legitimate daughter of an official family. So how could she possibly tolerate Shu Rong, a lowly illegitimate daughter, in this life? The only reason she had agreed to my marriage with Xiaoji in my previous life was because I had personally grown 16 potted camellias, her favorite flowers, and given them to her as a gift. After accepting the flowers, and wanting to reconcile with Xiaoji, she had taken the opportunity to agree to the marriage. In this life, would Xiaoji make Shu Rong learn to grow camellias like I did, or would he come up with some other scheme to win his mother over? The gates of the Boyang Marquis's mansion remained tightly shut. Xiaoji didn't step foot outside for 7 whole days. Clearly, he had been confined to the mansion as punishment. Shu Rong was beside herself with anxiety, constantly sending servants out to gather news about him. 2 days later, Xiaoji came to see Shu Rong before dawn broke. The two of them talked for an hour before Xiaoji finally left. Are you sure he was saying goodbye? I asked my wet nurse. He also begged for an imperial edict. I saw the imperial gold medal in his hand with my own eyes. Cousin, I hurried to find Song Shiqing, urging him urgently. You need to leave today, immediately. Originally, we had planned to set off tomorrow. You figured Xiaoji out, didn't you? Song Shiqing asked, his eyes sharp. He begged for an imperial edict to be sent to Jiawan County in the southwest, didn't he? I nodded. I had guessed correctly. Xiaoji planned to go to the southwest to earn military merits, bypassing his mother entirely. Then he would beg the emperor to grant him a marriage to Shu Rong. In my past life, a riot had broken out in Jiawan County in the southwest over the limestone mining business. The miners had caught the imperial court completely off guard, seizing 3 prefectures and 12 counties in a mere 3 months. News of the uprising had reached the capital in the dead of night yesterday, leaving the emperor so enraged that he had fainted on the spot. Later, to quell the rebellion, the imperial court had poured massive amounts of silver and manpower into the campaign, taking a full year and a half to stamp out the rioters. Since Xiaozhi has been ordered to lead the army, it will probably take him 3 more days to assemble his troops, I whispered. If you ride non-stop now, you can reach Jiawan at least half a month ahead of him. Song Shiqing was packing his bags when I asked, but what if someone questions why you just happened to be in Jiawan County? He was supposed to be in the capital, yet he would suddenly appear there. If someone with ill intent wanted to harm him, they could easily make a big deal out of this. Oh, my great-aunt's mother-in-law's third granduncle lives in Jiawan. Is there a problem with that? Song Shiqing said casually. I burst out laughing, giving him a thumbs up. Visiting relatives, stumbling upon a riot, and stepping in to suppress it, perfectly reasonable. 3 days later, Xiaozhi assembled his troops and set off for the southwest. My days were going smoothly. I practiced boxing every day, and my health grew better and better by the day. In contrast, Xu Rong wasted away, her lips covered in blisters. Even when she applied 3 layers of powder for the feast held to celebrate my father's promotion, she couldn't hide them. Before New Year's, victory reports kept pouring in from the southwest. By the Lunar New Year, the rebellion had been completely quelled. On the military merit list sent back to the capital, Song Shiqing's name was prominently listed ahead of Xiaozhi's. In the 3rd lunar month, Song Shiqing and Xiaozhi returned to the capital together. The emperor received them in the Golden Palace, praising them as young talents and pillars of the nation. When the emperor asked what rewards they desired, Xiaozhi spoke up first. Your Majesty, I wish to beg for an imperial edict of marriage. I do too, Song Shiqing echoed loudly. The emperor laughed heartily, chatting with the head eunuch. Youth without folly is not youth at all. Speak, which 2 young ladies are so fortunate to have won the hearts of my 2 beloved ministers? But Xiaozhi did not answer immediately. Instead, he turned to Song Shiqing and asked, You are also begging for an imperial marriage? Song Shiqing smiled a cold, fake smile. Of course. Xiaozhi pressed further. Are you asking the emperor to grant you a marriage to Jiao Jiao? Absolutely. Song Shiqing, Xiaozhi's face flushed with rage. How dare you? 6. A servant came running to report that Song Shiqing and Xiaozhi were fighting outside the mansion gate. Why are they fighting? My first thought was that Song Shiqing had picked a fight, though I was deeply disappointed in Xiaozhi. He had always had a much better temper than Song Shiqing. When I arrived at the gate, Xu Rong was already there too. Song Shiqing and Xiaozhi were locked in fierce combat. Surrounded by a crowd of onlookers, both were highly skilled in martial arts, and their moves were deadly, making the fight incredibly thrilling to watch. Cheers erupted from the crowd from time to time. My head began to throb with a splitting headache. I shouted, Stop! Xu Rong joined in, calling out anxiously, Brother Ji, cousin, stop fighting. Please stop. When Song Shiqing saw me, he sheathed his sword and strode toward me. Jiao Jiao, some people are just asking for a beating. Don't interfere. Are you hurt? I began to ask, but then I saw that Xiaozhi, who had intended to withdraw his sword, suddenly lunged at Song Shiqing again. I was terrified out of my wits. Watch out. Song Shiqing reacted with lightning speed. In the split second he spun around. His blade was already parrying the attack. The sword and knife clashed with a loud clang, and both men were wounded. How are you? I supported Song Shiqing, then turned to shout at Xiaozhi, Have you gone mad? He already sheathed his sword. Didn't you see that? Ignoring the wound on his shoulder, Xiaozhi strode forward quickly, grabbing the hand I had placed on Song Shiqing's arm. He glared at me, demanding an answer. Jiao Jiao, how dare you protect him? Do you know what he just did? Before I could respond, he roared angrily. He actually begged the emperor to grant him a marriage to you. Tell me, doesn't he deserve to die for that? You're the one who deserves to die. Song Shiqing raised his knife again, but I stepped between them, glaring at Xiaozhi. What does my life have to do with you? Xiaozhi stared at me in stunned disbelief. Brother Ji, Xu Rong walked over, her face as pale as a sheet, her voice trembling with fear. Brother Ji, are you hurt? Xiaozhi's body jolted as if waking from a dream. He turned to look at Xu Rong. as if only now remembering that in this life, he had long ago abandoned me and chosen her instead. His lips moved. But no words came out. If anything happens to my cousin, I will never forgive you, I warned Xiaozhi, then helped Song Shiqing back into the mansion. The sword in Xiaozhi's hand clattered to the ground. Inside the room, I applied medicinal ointment to Song Shiqing's wound. Fortunately, it was just a shallow cut. What on earth happened? Why did you two start fighting? They had spent months together in the southwest without coming to blows, yet on this important day, when they had returned to the capital to receive rewards and honors, they had actually fought. He's lost his mind, Song Shiqing said. He begged the emperor for a marriage edict, and when I said I wanted one too, he asked if I was going to marry you. I said yes, and then he went berserk. When the emperor saw what was happening, he probably guessed we were both asking for the same marriage, so he quickly gave us our rewards and sent us home. I was so angry I felt dizzy. If he wanted to beg for a marriage edict, why did you have to butt in? Song Shiqing smiled meaningfully. He got his military merits through underhanded means just to get an imperial edict to marry Xu Rong, didn't he? A two-timing scumbag like him. Did you really think I'd let him have his way? You should be grateful you didn't end up with him. A man like that isn't worth your affection. When did I ever like him? I said, exasperated. He patted my shoulder. Good, you're not in love with him anymore. As for our marriage, I'll definitely ask for your opinion first. Besides, we don't need an imperial edict. We'll get married when the time is right. Who said anything about marrying you? Get your head straight, I snapped, but he quickly changed the subject. Why are you yelling at me? The real problem is that shameless jerk. I'm worried about your future, I said. You finally worked your way up to the rank of deputy general. What if you lose your official position over this? In my past life, he had always served under my uncle's command. Because of his fiery temper and his habit of meddling in injustices, he had often gotten into fights with others. By the time I died, he had never been promoted. He was clearly a capable man. But his bad temper had held him back. Song Shiqing looked embarrassed, muttering under his breath, if he provokes me again, I'll still beat him up. You, forget it, go back to the military camp as soon as possible, do your duty well and earn more merits. Aim to become the youngest general in the Great Zhou dynasty. You want me to be a general? His eyes lit up with excitement. It's not about what I want, it's about what you should want for yourself. Besides, father has joined the Grand Secretariat, elder brother has been promoted, uncle is vice general, and you're deputy general. Our Shu family now has both civil and military power in its hands. We were no longer just the family of a mere third-rank official. If you get promoted further, our family will be truly unstoppable, one of the most powerful families in the country. Song Shiqing stared at me in a daze for a long moment, then nodded firmly. All right. Just you wait, this young master will make you proud and let you live like a queen. I'm being serious. You need to take this seriously too. I am serious, he said casually. Song Shiqing had been orphaned and homeless, begging for food in the northwest when he was 7 years old. That was when my uncle had found him and taken him in. He had claimed to have lost his memory back then, remembering nothing of his life before the age of 7, seeing how smart and well-behaved he was. My uncle had given him a name and raised him as his own son. Later, however, everyone had discovered that his good behavior had been nothing but an act. Causing trouble was his true nature. I have something for you, he said, rummaging through his bag and tossing me a golden medal. A reward from this young master. It was a deputy general's medal, custom made for him by the emperor himself, something no one else had. I can't take this, it's too valuable. You should keep it, I said. Without you, I would never have been promoted to deputy general. This medal is as much yours as it is mine. Song Shiqing picked up his bag, waving goodbye to me. I'm off, don't miss me too much. I chased after him, calling out, no more fighting or causing trouble. Do you hear me? Song Shiqing shouted over his shoulder. You don't know me at all. I never look for trouble, I only teach people a lesson when they deserve it. I could let Song Shiqing's childish antics slide, it was just him blowing off steam. But Xiaozhi made me feel sick to my stomach. What exactly was he trying to do? Have his cake and eat it too? He really thought he could have everything his way. When I returned to my room, I heard that Xu Rong had fallen ill. Concubine Yarrow had begged my mother to send for a physician, but my mother had refused. However, I secretly helped them. When the physician entered the mansion, he was followed by a servant with his head bowed. That servant was Xiaoji. I stood in the covered corridor, watching as Xiaoji entered Xu Rong's room with my own eyes. As midnight approached and Xiaoji still hadn't left, I sent someone to inform my father. When my father heard the news, he was so furious he nearly fainted. He immediately led a group of servants to Xu Rong's courtyard. My mother looked on coldly, sneering at my father. "So this is the innocent little girl you've been feeling guilty about all these years." My father slapped Xu Rong hard across the face, then immediately sent for the Marquis of Boyang. "Marquis," he said, his voice icy with rage, "either you send a matchmaker to propose marriage tomorrow, or I, Xu Junyi, will swallow my pride and go to the emperor to demand justice." "Minister Xu, please calm down," the Marquis of Boyang said, his face grim with embarrassment. "The two children acted foolishly. But we elders know better than to act without propriety. Rest assured I will send a matchmaker to your mansion first thing tomorrow morning to discuss the marriage." Now, even if the Marquis of Boyang looked down on Xu Rong, it would not matter. She had no choice but to accept the marriage. The next day, the two families quickly set the wedding date for the beginning of the 9th lunar month. When my wet nurse heard the news, she spat on the ground in disgust. Mother and daughter are both shameless, born with a talent for climbing into men's beds. They think marrying into a noble family will make them live a life of luxury. Bah! That Marquis of Boyang is a cruel and domineering woman. Just wait and see how she torments Xu Rong once she marries into the mansion. My wet nurse knew everything about the inner workings of noble households. Xu Rong would definitely be tortured to death by the Marquis after marrying into the Boyang Marquis's mansion. Xu Rong and concubine Yarrow began to prepare for the wedding in full swing. My mother paid no attention to them whatsoever, only allocating a sum of silver and letting the mother and daughter do as they pleased. Originally, given my father's gentle nature, he would have been deeply involved in arranging Xu Rong's wedding if she hadn't done something so foolish, as my mother had said. Even though father hated concubine Yarrow, he had always believed Xu Rong was innocent and had felt guilty toward her all these years. But after this incident, he hated the mother and daughter even more than my mother did. He not only refused to have anything to do with the wedding preparations, he wished he could kill them both. The mansion fell silent and desolate. Xu Rong herself was not particularly happy either. The next time I saw her, 7 or 8 days later, she had lost a great deal of weight and looked extremely pale and haggard. However, when she saw me, she forced a smile and greeted me warmly, chattering on about her relationship with Xiaoji and calling him Brother Ji every other sentence. "Hush," I interrupted her, my voice low and sharp. "If you keep calling him that, the entire capital will know just how intimate you two are." Xu Rong's face turned deathly pale in an instant. I shot her a disdainful glance, then turned and walked away with a flick of my sleeve. "What are you so proud of?" Xu Rong chased after me, her voice shrill with anger. "You were born with a silver spoon in your mouth. Everyone has always revolved around you. But I had nothing. If I didn't fight for myself, who in this family would have ever thought of me?" I turned back to look at her, a cold laugh escaping my lips. "Fight for yourself. Congratulations. Thanks to your efforts, your life is no longer yours to control." 8. Xiaoji never came to my house again. And I never saw him again either. The gossip about our family in the capital quickly faded from people's minds as news of a major flood in the southern regions spread. Princess Rui organized the noble ladies of the capital to donate money and supplies for disaster relief. My mother was enthusiastic about the cause, going to the princess's mansion every day to help. It was on one of these trips that I met Princess Nanping. I had seen her once after I died in my past life. She had been in love with my eldest brother, but for some reason, their relationship had never progressed to marriage. But I knew that neither of them had ever forgotten each other. Princess Nanping was tall, with a straightforward and decisive manner, though she was delicate and beautiful. Her style of dress and behavior were anything but feminine and refined. We hit it off immediately. That day, we made plans to go out for a meal together, at the restaurant. Nanping saw a group of men bullying a young singing girl, filled with righteous anger, she stepped in and started a fight with them. The two of us ended up taking on 7 men by ourselves. The restaurant owner reported the incident to the authorities. When my eldest brother arrived at the Yamen to bail me out, Nanping was still clutching one of the men by his hair and punching him. My brother stood there, his expression a priceless mix of shock and amusement, when Nanping turned around. There was a streak of blood running from her nose, making her look utterly disheveled. This was their first meeting in this life. I laughed so hard my stomach hurt. 7. My brother said that Princess Nanping reminded him a great deal of Song Shiqing. I had the same feeling. She and Song Shiqing were incredibly alike, not only in their pangshang for standing up for the weak, but also in their appearance. Perhaps it was true that the face reflects the heart. People with the same character often looked similar to each other. Nanping came to visit me at my house often, and I would go to the Rui Prince's mansion to see her as well. I never got to meet Prince Rui, but Princess Rui was a very serious woman. As the daughter of General Guo and a descendant of a military family, she carried herself with the dignity and authority of a general. She rarely smiled and had a commanding presence that made people respect her without her having to say a word. Princess Rui had married late, at the age of 23. My mother told me that Prince Rui had had a previous wife who had passed away, and Princess Rui was his second wife. When Princess Rui entered the mansion, her predecessor had left behind a 4-year-old son. Princess Rui had treated the boy extremely well, even saying that she would never have children of her own. But for some reason, less than 2 years later, the boy had died. The year after that, Princess Rui had given birth to Princess Nanping. Since then, however, Prince Rui and Princess Rui had stopped living in the same courtyard and eating at the same table. Though they had never divorced, they had become strangers to each other. I sighed quietly, feeling a twinge of sadness for them. Suddenly, someone nudged me on the shoulder. It was Princess Nanping, who asked me, "Want to go to Jiangnan with me?" I was in the middle of eating a melon and nearly choked on it when I heard her words. After coughing for a long time, I looked at her and said, "Don't tell me you're planning to follow my brother to Jiangnan now that he's been ordered to go there." Princess Nanping rolled her eyes at me. "Some things are better left unsaid," she said. "If you keep talking like this, I'll have to hit you." I burst out laughing, throwing my arms around her. All right, future sister-in-law. Please don't hit me, I have delicate skin and can't take it." Nanping pinched my cheek playfully. "Delicate skin? I think you're just thick-skinned." After our playful bickering, we both agreed to go to Jiangnan. I had already died once in this life. In this second chance, I wanted to fight to live well, and to do all the things I had wanted to do but had dared not do in my past life. Besides, if anything went wrong, I knew that Princess Nanping and my brother would always have my back. 8. It took us 20 days to reach Jiangnan. Along the way, Nanping and I had been worried that we would find a land of death and destruction, filled with starving people and ruined villages. To our surprise, however, the situation was far better than we had imagined. Suddenly, I spotted a man covered in mud, leading an ox as he plowed a field. I pointed at him, so shocked that I could barely speak. Song Shiqing. Song Shiqing looked up in our direction. When he saw who it was, he broke into a huge grin. His face was tanned dark from the sun, but his teeth were white and bright, shining so brightly that they seemed to light up the grey, overcast surroundings. "Jiao Jiao," he shouted, waving at me. He ran toward us barefoot, splashing through the mud. That was when I found out that Song Shiqing had arrived in Jiangnan half a month before us. He hadn't come alone, he had brought a unit of his own soldiers with him. I heard that these 300 men were his elite troops, handpicked and trained by him personally. Not only were they skilled in combat, but they also knew how to build houses, repair city walls and dikes, smelt iron, and forge weapons. They were practically jacks of all trades. When the emperor learned of this, he had personally issued an order transferring Song Shiqing and his troops to Jiangnan to assist with disaster relief efforts. In the short span of half a month since his arrival, he had already managed to get most of the relief work done. That was why the region now looked so peaceful and stable. I was truly astonished, finding it hard to believe what I was seeing and hearing. Song Shiqing was so capable. "You're amazing," my eldest brother praised him. showering him with compliments. Then he suddenly remembered something and introduced Song Shiqing to Nanping. "This is Princess Nanping." Song Shiqing froze for a moment. He looked at Nanping, and the smile on his face faded slightly. "So you're Song Shiqing," Nanping said, shooting me an ambiguous glance before nodding slightly at him. "It's a pleasure to meet you." Song Shiqing's gaze swept across Nanping's face quickly. He nodded in return, then turned and led my brother away. The two of them squatted down on the ridge of the field, heads bent together as they discussed something in low voices. "You really don't know people well," Nanping said to me. "Song Shiqing is nothing like the reckless, troublemaking playboy you described him as." I looked a little embarrassed, laughing awkwardly. "Why yeah, I guess not." Feeling a bit awkward, I took Nanping's arm. "Let's go find our accommodation first and get settled in. Then we can walk around and see if there's anything we can do to help." Like Song Shiqing, we were all staying at the county government office. However, since there were so many people, the four of us had to share a single courtyard. There was no way to separate the men from the women. After dinner, I was washing clothes by the well when Song Shiqing sat down opposite me. "You didn't bring any maids with you on this trip." "We're not here for fun," I replied, wringing the water out of my hands and scratching at the mosquito bites on my legs. The mosquitoes here were terrible. Within a short while, I already had 7 or 8 bites on my legs. Song Shiqing looked at my legs, then waved a hand dismissively. "Go back to your room, I'll finish washing these for you." "You," I said, pushing him lightly, "you'll probably ruin my clothes if you try." Song Shiqing didn't insist. Instead, he went back to his room and returned with a cattail leaf fan. He squatted down beside me and started fanning me. I looked at the fan in his hand and laughed. "You look like an old man sitting under a tree enjoying the cool breeze." Song Shiqing fanned me even harder, grinning. "Have you ever seen an old man as handsome as me?" I made a face at him, pretending to be disgusted. "You're so tanned you look like a piece of charcoal. Where's the handsomeness?" Song Shiqing snorted indignantly. "Boss." Several of Song Shiqing's subordinates walked past, eyeing me with obvious amusement. "Is this your sister-in-law?" I was about to explain when Song Shiqing glared at them, his face turning stern. "Nonsense. Get out of here. The boss is blushing." The men laughed. Even more amused than before, they jostled each other as they called out to me, "Hello, sister-in-law." My face turned bright red with embarrassment. Song Shiqing picked up a pebble and threw it at them. Scram! The men ran off, laughing loudly. Song Shiqing went back to fanning me, his eyes darting around as he tried to hide the smile that just wouldn't leave his face. I stared at him with a straight face. "Song Shiqing, your fan is hitting my face. I have eyes in the back of my head." He retorted, "I couldn't have hit you. I don't have eyes in the back of my head." I shot back, "Let me hit your face a couple of times to make it even." 9. There was a lot of work to be done for the disaster relief efforts. My brother was busy coordinating the distribution of grain and supplies, so busy that we barely saw him. Nanping disguised herself as a clerk and helped with the accounting every day. I had originally wanted to help my brother, but Nanping gave me a look that clearly said she would beat me up if I tried to tag along with them. Reluctantly, I changed my mind and went to help Song Shiqing instead. Song Shiqing had been busy helping the local villagers repair their collapsed houses recently. Some of the houses had been completely destroyed and needed to be rebuilt from scratch. His 300 soldiers were divided into teams with specific tasks, working quickly and efficiently. The local villagers admired and liked them very much. I didn't have much to do, so I helped out as a bricklayer's assistant, carrying soil and mortar. Sometimes, when the kitchen needed extra hands, I would go help wash vegetables and pick greens. Jiao jiao. In the evening, Song Shiqing rode over from another village on horseback. "It's time to go home." I sat sideways on the horse, while Song Shiqing led it by the reins. The golden glow of the setting sun bathed everything around us in a warm, golden light, even making the grass by the roadside look vibrant and alive. Song Shiqing had rolled up his trouser legs. His cloth shoes were soaked through and wouldn't stay on his feet, so he had to slip them on like slippers. With every step he took, his feet made a squelching sound against the ground. It was like a steady, unhurried beat, squish, 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 that somehow made me feel calm and at peace. Song Shiqing held his horsewhip in his right hand and the reins in his left. Greeting the familiar faces along the road as we walked, "Hello, Lord Song, hello, madam." Every time someone called me that, Song Shiqing would wave his hand and reply in the local dialect, which I couldn't understand at all, but the villagers would always laugh even more ambiguously after he spoke. I suspected that Song Shiqing was saying something teasing about me, so I forced him to explain. He avoided the question, changing the subject instead. "Do you want to eat fish?" I frowned. "The water is so muddy, how can there be any fish?" Song Shiqing turned to look at me, his young face glowing in the sunset light, bright and bold and full of life. "Haven't you heard the saying, muddy water makes it easy to catch fish?" "You're just boasting," I said. "If you can't catch any fish later, I'll laugh at you for a whole year." "I'd let you laugh at me for a lifetime," he said softly. 10. Song Shiqing whittled a thin bamboo stick into a sharp point, then stood in the murky water. Closing his eyes and tilting his head to listen intently, I had no idea what he was listening for. All I could hear was the sound of the wind and the chirping of cicadas, but after a moment, he suddenly struck out with lightning speed. When he lifted his makeshift spear, he held it up triumphantly, grinning at me. "Jiao jiao, do you want it roasted or braised?" He had actually caught a fish. He even knew how to roast fish. He seasoned it with coarse salt, and by the time I finished washing up, the fish was already roasting over the fire, filling the air with a delicious aroma. I sat in the middle of 4 burning moxa sticks, though the smoke stung my eyes so badly that I could barely open them. At least there were no mosquitoes biting me anymore. "Try my cooking skills," he said, handing me the fish. "Don't hold back, praise me to the skies." I took a bite. It was actually really good. I ate about half the fish, then passed the rest to him. "It's delicious, Lord Song. You're good at everything, truly amazing." "Of course I am," Song Shiqing said, preening under the compliment, riding the wave of my praise. "There's nothing in this world I can't do." I rolled my eyes at him. "Can you build a house? Can you smelt iron? Can you write official documents? I think the only thing you're really good at is bragging." Song Shiqing sat down beside me, fanning me gently as he frowned. "Little girls who haven't seen the world can't judge people properly." "I won't blame you for that, miss," I burst out laughing. Later, I realized that Song Shiqing really could do everything. "Where did you learn all this?" I asked, standing beside the blacksmith's forge, watching in awe as he hammered out a kitchen knife. He glanced at me, his tone casual. "Do you really need to learn something like this?" His retort left me speechless. "Ah, right. You're the smartest person alive. It's a good thing there aren't many people as clever as you, otherwise master craftsmen would never find any apprentices." Song Shiqing grinned triumphantly. "We're starting to plant seeds tomorrow. Are you coming?" he asked. "Yes," I replied. I would go wherever I could be useful. If I would only be in the way, I'd stay put. "Boss," one of his subordinates came running over in a hurry. "Something's wrong with Lord Shu. The villagers of Luoshan County are complaining that they got fewer seeds than Longping County. They're demanding Lord Shu compensate them." Song Shiqing tossed the kitchen knife into a basin of water with a sharp sizzle. "Let's go to Luoshan and see what's going on." When we reached the border between Luoshan and Longping, the villagers from both counties were fighting tooth and nail. A huge, chaotic crowd, some wielding hoes, others bamboo poles, grabbing whatever they could as weapons. The air was filled with shouting, screaming, and the neighing of horses. It was utter pandemonium. Local constables and militiamen stood on both sides, wringing their hands in frustration, completely unable to break up the brawl. "This is sheer rebellion." Song Shiqing lifted me off the horse, then charged into the crowd, cracking his whip left and right. In moments, he had separated the 2 fighting groups. He sat tall on his horse, his face cold and his eyes sharp as he scanned the crowd. His voice thundered out, stern and unyielding. "You've only just escaped death and filled your bellies, now you're already tired of living in peace." As he spoke, everyone fell deathly silent. Later, I found out that on his first day distributing porridge here, Song Shiqing had encountered a similar riot and he had dealt with it harshly, making an example of the troublemakers. Now, the villagers here both feared and respected him. Sister-in-law, Changfeng, one of his subordinates, stood beside me, grinning. Our boss is incredible. In the military camp, his orders carry more weight than even the generals. I was surprised. He's always getting into fights and causing trouble. How could his words hold that much sway? He only fights to stand up for others, Changfeng said, still smiling. Besides, the boss is the most loyal man you'll ever meet. He never turns his back on his brothers when they're in trouble. He can solve any problem if you go to him for help. He'll always find a way. I suddenly realized that I didn't really know Song Shiqing at all. In my mind, he had been a lazy, troublemaking layabouts at home, so my uncle had dragged him off to the military camp to discipline him. Then, because he was always meddling in other people's business and picking fights, he had never gotten a promotion. But now I saw that his way of doing things actually worked wonders in the military. He was deeply loved and highly respected by his men. Furthermore, since arriving here, he had quickly bonded with the locals, adapting his manner to suit everyone, whether they were men, women, the elderly, or children. Song Shiqing was not the impulsive, brainless hothead I had thought he was. He was smart, calculating, and shrewd. He just hid all that beneath a playful, carefree exterior, and I, foolish and narrow-minded as I was, had never seen past it. I watched as Song Shiqing swiftly mediated the conflict, beginning to hold the ringleaders accountable for their actions. He seemed both familiar and utterly foreign to me. 11. Song Shiqing punished the ringleaders from both sides separately, assigning them different penalties based on their roles in the riot. He didn't cut corners or try to smooth things over. He checked every detail personally, handing out different numbers of cane strokes to each offender. Not a single person complained. They all submitted to his judgment obediently. By the time he had finished handling everything, the sky had turned completely dark. He helped me onto the horse, then reverted to his usual playful self, tossing me a fruit. "Eat this, it's extremely sweet." "I don't believe you," I said. The fruit looked sour as could be. He gave me a take it or leave it look. Curious, I took a bite anyway. The sourness made my teeth ache. Enraged, I threw the fruit at him. He laughed loudly, catching it mid-air and taking a bite as he walked. "It's not sour at all," he said. "So I wasn't lying to you." I ground my teeth in frustration. We stayed in Jiangnan until the end of the 9th lunar month before returning to the capital, and Song Shiqing came back with us. On the journey home, it was obvious that my brother and Princess Nanping's relationship had changed. I quietly asked my brother if he was going to marry Nanping and make her my sister-in-law. He blushed and glared at me, but didn't deny it. "Then I'll be looking forward to your wedding feast," I said. But I couldn't help wondering. They were clearly in love, and both were strong-willed, decisive people. Why hadn't they ended up together in my past life? Had Prince and Princess Rui disapproved of their relationship? But my brother was second to none in terms of character, looks, and official position. Why would the Rui royal couple object? On the day we returned to the capital, the four of us went to the palace to pay our respects to the emperor. When the emperor saw Song Shiqing again, he beamed with delight, personally helping him up from his bow. "Lord Song, though you are young, you are steady and capable beyond your years. You are a blessing to me and to the great Zhou dynasty." Song Shiqing clasped his fists in a salute. "It is my honor to serve your majesty and to work for the people. That is my greatest fortune." The emperor laughed heartily, then turned to help my brother up, addressing my father, who had just entered the hall. "Minister Shu, you are truly remarkable. Your son is outstanding and talented, and your nephew is a rare prodigy. My realm is blessed with so many fine young men, and your Shu family will surely thrive for generations to come." My father beamed with pride, responding with humble thanks. The emperor rewarded all four of us generously, promoting my brother and Song Shiqing to higher official positions. Since Nanping and I were women and could not hold government office, he showered us with gold, silver, pearls, and jade instead. "Prepare a feast," the emperor declared. "Today, I shall drink to my heart's content with my most valued ministers." We followed the emperor to a side hall. He had invited many high-ranking officials to the banquet, and Prince and Princess Rui arrived shortly after us. Nanping took me to pay our respects to them. It was the first time I had ever laid eyes on Prince Rui. When I finally saw his face clearly, I froze in surprise. Prince Rui was thin and gaunt, but even in his middle age, His features remained refined and elegant. For some reason, looking at him filled me with a strange sense of familiarity. "I look just like my father," Nanping said, noticing my stunned expression. "Yes, you do," I replied automatically, then paused, a sudden thought striking me like lightning. I immediately turned to look for Song Shiqing. He had been sitting facing our direction earlier, but now, for some reason, he had turned around, his back to us. I couldn't see his face. I thought, with a jolt, that Song Shiqing and Prince Rui looked very much alike too. 12. As the wine flowed freely. The emperor grew increasingly talkative, pulling his favorite ministers over to introduce them to everyone present. Song Shiqing seemed to have little enthusiasm for the proceedings, but he dared not refuse the emperor's kindness, so he went along with it reluctantly. I was sitting with my head bowed, sipping my tea, when I suddenly heard the sound of a teacup shattering from the next table. I looked up and saw that Prince Rui was holding nothing but an empty saucer. His teacup lay in pieces at his feet, tea soaked his robes, but he didn't seem to notice. He was staring at Song Shiqing, completely transfixed, his eyes wide with shock. Everyone at the banquet stared at Prince Rui in confusion. "What is the matter?" the emperor asked him. Prince Rui finally snapped out of his daze, tearing his gaze away from Song Shiqing. He stood up, bowing deeply to apologize. "Your Majesty." My hand slipped and I dropped my cup. "Please forgive my clumsiness." The emperor was in high spirits and paid no mind to the incident, laughing and waving a hand dismissively. "The loss of a teacup is the will of heaven. Today, you shall drink more wine instead." Prince Rui bowed again, murmuring his thanks. I watched them silently, a wild, incredible suspicion taking root in my heart. After the banquet ended, we left the palace without seeing Song Shiqing. I assumed he would return home later, but he didn't show up even by the next day. My brother sent servants out to look for him. Could he have gone straight back to the northwest? My mother worried aloud. "I'll write to Uncle right away to check if he's returned to the military camp," my brother said, immediately sitting down to pen a letter. I sat peeling an orange, my mind wandering. Just then, an old woman came in to report to my mother. "Madam, concubine Yarrow has snuck out of the mansion again." Shu Rong had married into the Boyang Marquis's mansion at the beginning of the 9th lunar month. I hadn't seen her since we returned to the capital, nor had I made any effort to find out how she was faring. Now, hearing the old woman's vague report about concubine Yarrow, I couldn't help asking, did she say where she was going? She snuck off to the house that was part of Shu Rong's dowry to meet her daughter in secret, my mother replied, sipping her tea indifferently. "We don't need to bother with her. I've already told your father if she dares to cause any more trouble, I'll have her sold off as a slave, no matter who she is or whose mother she happens to be." As soon as my mother finished speaking, Chang Feng suddenly stumbled into the room, supported by two servants. His face was ashen with terror. "No good, our boss, he tried to assassinate Prince Rui. He's been arrested." We were all struck dumb with shock. 13. Song Shiqing had not been imprisoned in the Ministry of Justice. Instead, he was being held in the Imperial Clan Court. My brother frowned in confusion. Why is he being detained there? Only members of the imperial family were imprisoned in the Imperial Clan Court. Ordinary commoners, or even government officials had no right to be held there. "Let's go see him first," I said firmly. When we finally saw Song Shiqing, he was still wearing the same dark blue robe he had worn to the banquet. The lapel and cuffs were stained with blood. He was leaning back in a chair, staring blankly up at the ceiling, his face haggard and exhausted, as if he hadn't slept a wink all night. My mother called out to him, her voice filled with heartache. Song Shiqing finally snapped out of his daze, turning to look at us. He managed a weak, lopsided smile. "What on earth happened?" my father demanded. "Why are you accused of trying to assassinate Prince Rui?" "I didn't try to assassinate him," Song Shiqing said with a bitter laugh, his tone as casual as ever. "He stabbed himself, said he wanted to give me his life." We exchanged confused glances, even more baffled than before. "Shiqing, please explain everything clearly to your uncle and aunt," my mother urged, her eyes filled with worry. "You're breaking our hearts like this." Song Shiqing opened his mouth to speak, but before he could say a word, a voice suddenly came from behind us. "Everyone, Allow this prince to explain what really happened. I turned around and saw Prince Rui standing in the doorway, his face pale as a sheet, supported by two eunuchs. Though he was wearing an outer robe, blood was seeping through the fabric over his chest. Shiqing. Prince Rui sat down heavily, gazing at Song Shiqing with a deep, sorrowful sigh. He is my son. Reeling from one shock after another, my mother stumbled, her voice trembling. Your Royal Highness, your son was supposed to have already. How could Shiqing possibly be? Prince Rui said that from the very first moment he laid eyes on Song Shiqing, he had known the young man was his son, for he looked exactly like Prince Rui had in his youth. When he finished speaking, my father suddenly had a realization, exclaiming, "No wonder the Emperor mentioned earlier this year that Song Shiqing looked familiar. We never dreamed he was referring to you, Your Royal Highness." Prince Rui gave a bitter smile. "I must start from the beginning," he said, "only then will you understand everything." He told us that he and the current Princess Rui, Lady Guo, had originally pledged their love to each other in private, but the late emperor, without consulting his wishes, had issued an imperial edict ordering him to marry another woman. He had had no choice but to comply. After their marriage, though the couple were not deeply in love, they had treated each other with mutual respect and courtesy. The following year, they had welcomed a son into the world, and that son was Song Shiqing. But Prince Rui said that his heart had never forgotten Lady Guo, who had also never married anyone else. He had thought that he and Lady Guo were destined to be apart, and had resigned himself to his fate. But then, for years later, his first wife had passed away from illness. Grief-stricken though he was, a glimmer of hope had stirred in his heart once more. Half a year later, he had married Lady Guo as his second wife. After Lady Guo entered the royal mansion, she had always treated Song Shiqing with great kindness and care. She had even said that she would never have children of her own, that raising Song Shiqing would be enough for her. At that time, he had sighed with contentment, thinking to himself, to have such a wife. What more could a man ask for? But then, when Song Shiqing was 6 years old, he had gone out to watch the Lantern Festival displays and had never come home. He had searched every corner of the capital and its surrounding areas, but to no avail. He had even fallen gravely ill from the sorrow and anxiety. He had continued to send people to search for his son over the years, but had never received any news of him. It was not until 2 years later, when Princess Nanping was born, that he had finally begun to emerge from his despair. He had thought that his life had finally settled into a fragile peace until he had accidentally learned that it was Lady Guo who had arranged for Song Shiqing to go to the Lantern Festival that day. A seed of doubt had taken root in his heart. Had Lady Guo deliberately gotten rid of the boy? He had confronted Lady Guo about it. She had admitted to it, saying that she had done it, that she had killed Song Shiqing. He had not been able to bring himself to kill Lady Guo, but from that day onward, their marriage had been completely shattered. Though they had never divorced, they had become strangers to each other, living under the same roof but worlds apart. "Jingji," Prince Rui said, turning to Song Shiqing, his voice thick with emotion. "Father never dreamed you were still alive. Father is so sorry." Song Shiqing lifted his eyes, his gaze sweeping coldly over Prince Rui's face. He let out a bitter, mocking laugh. "You don't need to apologize to me. The one you owe an apology to is my mother. She married you for 5 years, and endured 5 years of misery. If she hadn't been so unhappy, she would never have died so young." Prince Rui's face turned ashen, but he did not refute the words. "Less than half a year after she died, you married someone new, and you even sighed, saying how blessed you were to have such a wife. You shameless man." Prince Rui's chest heaved with rage and grief. He spat out a mouthful of blood. 14. Prince Rui was carried back to his mansion. Before he left, he said that he had already explained everything to the emperor, that he had been the one who had acted impulsively and wounded himself. Therefore, Song Shiqing was free to go. Song Shiqing walked away without looking back. Our entire family was left reeling, our hearts heavy with complicated emotions. My mother murmured softly, "So that child never lost his memory all those years ago. He just couldn't bear to talk about his past." My father sighed deeply as well. A wave of sadness washed over me. After thinking it over for a long time, I picked up a pot of wine and went to find Song Shiqing. He was leaning against a pillar in the courtyard. When he saw me approaching, he broke into a smile. "You even brought me wine. I didn't dote on you for nothing. The fact that you're still in the mood to joke around is a relief," I said, handing him the wine pot and sitting down beside him to drink with him. We said nothing, letting the silence stretch between us. When the two of us had emptied the pot, he turned to look at me, his eyes glistening with the faint haze of drunkenness. "I actually remember everything from my childhood. When Uncle took me in, I lied on purpose and said I couldn't remember anything." I nodded silently, urging him to continue. "When she married into the royal mansion, I was still very young. Everyone called her my mother, so I did too. Was it all an act?" I asked, my voice soft. "Was she two-faced? Did she treat you badly? Was it her who abandoned you at the Lantern Festival?" Song Shiqing let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head slowly. "If that had been the case, I would have come back long ago to take my revenge, but that's not what happened. He told me that Lady Guo had truly been kind to him. He believed that when she had said she would never have children of her own and would raise him instead, she had meant it sincerely." I still remember the New Year's Eve when I was 6 years old. We were staying up late to welcome the new year. She thought I was asleep, so she sighed softly beside my ear. She said that my mother's death, though not something she had directly caused, she knew deep down that it had been related to her. Lady Guo had whispered that it was all the cruelty of fate. She had never wanted things to turn out this way, but she was only a mortal woman, trapped in the mundane world, powerless to change her destiny. "So the one who wanted to kill you at the Lantern Festival wasn't Lady Guo, it was General Guo?" I asked, the pieces finally falling into place. Song Shiqing was certain that Lady Guo had known nothing about the plot, but Prince Rui said she admitted to it. So she was covering up for her father." Song Shiqing nodded, his jaw tightening with anger. "That old scoundrel Guorang, I'll kill him sooner or later." I suddenly understood why Song Shiqing had gotten into a fight with Guorang in my past life. I even formed another guess. The reason my brother and Princess Nanping had not ended up together in my previous life must have been related to Song Shiqing's true identity. In my past life, Song Shiqing had fought with General Guo, leaving the general severely injured. Though Guorang had not died from his wounds, his health had been permanently damaged. That grudge, perhaps, had become the reason my brother and Nanping had been forced to part ways. For a long time, I could only sigh, my heart heavy with sorrow for all that had transpired. 15. The next day, an honored guest arrived at our mansion. Princess Nanping accompanied Princess Rui on her visit. "I apologize for disturbing you," Princess Rui said, her expression as impassive as ever, her back ramrod straight as if nothing in the world could ever make her break her composure. "I would like to speak with him." My mother asked Song Shiqing for his permission, and after he agreed, she arranged for them to meet in the study. None of us heard what was said between them, but when Princess Rui emerged from the study, her eyes were red and swollen, clear evidence that she had been crying. Princess Nanping supported her mother, her lips trembling as if she had 1,000 things to say but did not know how to begin. But Princess Rui seemed to have finally found peace. She looked at all of us, and for the first time since I had met her, she smiled, a soft, gentle smile that transformed her stern features. Princess Rui turned to my brother, her voice warm with sincerity. "I know about you and Nanping. This morning, I begged the emperor to issue an imperial edict granting you two permission to marry. From now on, I entrust my Nanping to you, your royal highness." My brother began, wanting to say something, but found that no words were adequate. That afternoon, Princess Rui went to Huangjue Temple and had her head shaved, becoming a Buddhist nun. Princess Nanping sat at the foot of the temple's steps, sighing softly. Mother said that ever since the year father was forced to marry someone else by imperial edict, she had wanted to shave her head and become a nun, but she had always been too cowardly, too attached to the mortal world, to take that step. Mother also said that if she had found the courage to become a nun earlier, perhaps my brother's mother would not have wasted away from grief and died young, and my brother would never have been separated from his family, forced to wander the world alone, too afraid to go home. Yesterday, she finally got to meet my brother and pour out her heart to him. Now, She has no more regrets left in this mortal life. Princess Nanping looked at me. Her eyes filled with sadness and loss. I wrapped my arms around her, patting her back gently, not knowing what to say to comfort her. Why did it have to end this way? Song Shiqing said, leaning against a tree trunk, a blade of grass dangling from his lips. His expression was calm, but his voice held a hint of bitterness. He said that none of this had been Princess Rui's fault. He said that women's lives were far too difficult. It was always women who were trapped by their identities, unable to break free from the chains of fate. Jiao Jiao, he said, turning to look at me, his gaze softening. If you don't want to get married, then don't. Just be yourself, and that's enough. I nodded firmly, my voice resolute. I won't marry, never. A look of profound sadness crossed Song Shiqing's face. I knew he must be thinking of his mother. After a long, quiet moment, I let out a soft sigh. I think the path Princess Rui chose must hold something that matters more to her than anything else in the world. I said softly, she must not have any regrets. That's quite an insightful thing to say, Song Shiqing said, reaching out to ruffle my hair gently. For someone so young, you're surprisingly wise. I thought that it was he who was the wise one. At such a young age, he had carried the weight of so much pain and grief, hiding his true feelings behind a carefree, playful mask. I could not bear to imagine how many lonely, sorrowful nights he had endured, nights when he must have missed his home and his mother desperately. How had he survived it all? I did not dare to think about it. 16. Guorang returned to the capital. He submitted a memorial to the emperor, confessing his crimes and begging to be stripped of his official position. He had even begged the emperor to punish him severely, but the emperor, taking pity on his advanced age, had refused to do so. So Guorang had confined himself to his mansion, sealing the gates and vowing that he would never set foot outside its walls again until the day he died. When we heard the news, Song Shiqing was making a kite for me. His kites always flew incredibly high. I also discovered that he was extremely talented at painting. You really are good at everything, aren't you? I said, smiling at him in admiration. Of course I am, he replied, grinning proudly. I had to show off a little, otherwise you'd keep thinking I was just bragging all the time. I tilted my head back, watching the kite soaring high in the sky, dancing freely with the wind. A sudden thought popped into my head. What if we cut the string, let it fly even higher, with no more ties to hold it back? I had expected Song Shiqing to agree with me, but instead, he flicked me lightly on the forehead. What are you thinking? I worked so hard to make this kite. I glared at him, rubbing my forehead indignantly. A gentleman uses his words, not his fists. I've never claimed to be a gentleman, he retorted, his eyes twinkling with mischief, and besides, he suddenly leaned in close, his face inches from mine, his gaze burning with an intensity that made my heart skip a beat. I take back what I said yesterday about you not having to marry if you don't want to. I froze, staring at him in confusion. You have to marry, he said firmly, stroking his chin thoughtfully as if he were describing the perfect candidate for marriage, and that candidate was none other than himself. And you have to choose carefully. You need to marry someone steady and reliable. Song Shiqing, have you no shame? Nope, he said cheerfully. When have you ever known me to have any shame? I was so amused that I could not help but laugh, turning away from him in feigned annoyance. Just tell me, he said suddenly, his voice turning serious, his eyes locking onto mine. Will you marry me? Give me an answer. I'll wait for you for 3 years, 5 years, however long it takes. If you really don't want to, that's okay too, he added quickly, his voice softening. I'll stay with you, and we'll grow old together, just the two of us. But there's one condition. He fixed me with a playful, yet determined stare. You can choose not to marry me, but you're not allowed to marry anyone else either. Are you threatening me? I demanded, pinching his arm hard. Looks like being promoted to a higher official position has gone to your head, Lord Song. He yelped in pain, jumping away from me with a laugh. See that? I said, pointing to the pond outside the courtyard. If that pond freezes over with 3 feet of ice by tomorrow morning, I'll marry you. Song Shiqing flew into a mock rage, stamping his foot indignantly. That's not fair. It's only the beginning of the 10th lunar month. How could it possibly freeze 3 feet deep overnight? I let out a triumphant HMPH, tossing the kite string back to him and turning on my heel to walk away. The next day, I got up bright and early, rushing to the window to look out at the pond. The 2 ducks I had raised were paddling happily on the water's surface, completely unperturbed by the cool autumn air. Satisfied, I wrapped myself back up in my quilt and went back to sleep. Dozing soundly until the afternoon, I was jolted awake by someone pounding loudly on my door. My maid burst into the room, her face flushed with excitement. Miss, you have to come and see, hurry." I was dragged out of the room by my arm. Song Shiqing was standing by the edge of the pond, his clothes covered in mud, his face red from the cold wind, but his eyes were shining brightly, and his white teeth were gleaming in the sunlight. "Shu Jiao," he shouted, pointing dramatically at the pond behind him. 3 feet of ice. "Now will you marry me? You?" I ran over to take a closer look. Sure enough, a block of ice as big as a vat was floating in the pond, and it was obviously extremely thick. I turned to Song Shiqing, narrowing my eyes. "Where did you get this ice?" "We can talk about that later. First, answer my question." "No, wait," I said, suspicion dawning on me. "Did you get this from some wealthy noble family in the capital? Is this the ice they stored for the summer?" There was no way to get ice this thick anywhere at this time of year, not unless it was the leftover ice that rich households had stockpiled to keep cool during the summer months. But even then, very few families would still have any ice left. Not only would most of it have been used up, but what little remained should have melted away by now, no matter how he had gotten this block of ice. It must have taken an incredible amount of effort. "Shu Jiao, you're going back on your word," Song Shiqing said, feigning a look of hurt. "I just don't want to marry you." "So what?" "Oh, but you do," he countered, grinning mischievously. "If you didn't, you wouldn't have slept in until this afternoon. Normally you're up practicing martial arts at dawn. You were waiting for my ice, weren't you?" His words left me speechless, my face burning with embarrassment. I turned on my heel and stormed back into my room, refusing to look at him. "Shu Jiao," Song Shiqing shouted, pounding on the door behind me. "I'm going to tell my parents, and my aunt too." I slammed the door shut, but I could still hear him jumping up and down outside, yelling at the top of his lungs, "I'm getting married. I have a wife, Auntie. Jiao agreed to marry me. Auntie, if you don't approve, I'll marry into the Shu family. I don't mind being a son-in-law." I heard my mother scoff playfully at him through the door, and then she joined in his shouting match, adding to the chaos. My wet nurse later told me that Song Shiqing had gone around telling everyone in the neighborhood that he was getting married that day. He had even bought 3 sacks of wedding candies and handed them out to anyone he met. The nerve of him, distributing wedding candies before we've even set a date. I huffed, pretending to be annoyed. "He didn't sleep a wink last night. You know," my wet nurse said, chuckling softly, "he must have asked dozens of families, running all over the capital just to get that ice. And he didn't even look tired afterward. He's truly over the moon, he just can't keep it to himself." I sat down on the edge of my bed, staring at the block of ice that was slowly melting by the window. A warm, fuzzy feeling spread through my chest. 17. When Song Shiqing and I got engaged, my uncle returned to the capital as well. Prince Rui invited my uncle and his family to the royal mansion for tea. I heard that Prince Rui told Song Shiqing that he respected whatever decision he made. If he wanted to acknowledge his royal lineage and return to the clan, he could do so. If he did not want to, Prince Rui would personally explain the situation to the emperor and take full responsibility. Song Shiqing said that he would eventually acknowledge his royal roots, but only after Prince Rui passed away. He said that as long as Prince Rui was alive, he would never live under his roof or call him father to enjoy the warmth of family, because Prince Rui did not deserve it. As for my uncle's family, my uncle already had 2 sons of his own, so there was no pressure on Song Shiqing to carry on the family name. My uncle told him that the decision was entirely his to make. Our wedding was set for the 8th lunar month of the year after next. The emperor promoted Song Shiqing to the position of right military governor and even bestowed a grand mansion upon him as a wedding gift. My brother and Princess Nanping's wedding was scheduled for the 9th lunar month of the following year. For a while, All of us were kept busy with wedding preparations. There was always one thing after another to take care of. One day, I went out to inspect a shop we were planning to buy, returning home as the sun was setting. As my carriage passed through a narrow alley, the old woman accompanying me called my attention to something outside. I lifted the curtain and saw Xiaoji, leaning drunkenly against the wall of the alley. His eyes were bleary with alcohol as he looked up and saw me. "Jiao Jiao," he slurred. Stumbling unsteadily toward the carriage, he stood beneath my window, craning his neck to look up at me, his gaze fixed on my face with a greedy, desperate intensity. "Jiao Jiao, I've missed you so much. But I was too afraid to go see you. I miss you more than anything." "Xiaoji, you're drunk, stop talking nonsense," I said coldly. "I'm so sorry," he cried, clinging to the edge of the carriage window, tears pooling in his bloodshot eyes. "You might not believe me, but I've been reborn too, after you died in my past life. I missed you every single day, so much that I couldn't sleep at night." Shu Rong came to my house to work as a maid, saying she wanted to atone for her sins. I knew she had ulterior motives, so I punished her harshly every chance I got. It was like torturing her made the pain of missing you just a little bit easier to bear. I don't know what happened. One day, I thought I was starting to like her. I ran back into the woods and hugged her tightly. In that moment, the feeling of having something lost returned to me, made me lose my mind. Later that night, I had a dream. When I woke up, I was back by the river again. You were struggling in the icy water, fighting for your life. I don't know what came over me. I abandoned you and ran to find Shu Rong instead. I missed you so much, I really did. His words were disjointed and rambling, but if I had not been reborn myself, I would never have understood what he was talking about. Unfortunately for him, I understood every single word. "Xiaoji," I said, looking down at him, my voice calm and steady. "The path you chose must have led you to the person you deemed most important. Just follow your heart, and don't look back, because the person you abandoned will not wait for you forever. And don't regret your choice, because it was what your heart wanted at the time." Xiaoji's body trembled violently. The flush of drunkenness drained from his face, leaving it ashen and pale. After what felt like an eternity, he spoke, his voice hoarse and broken. "So the moment I turned my back on you, we were never going to have a chance, were we?" "That's right, Xiaoji," I said without hesitation. "I will not wait for you, and you are not worth waiting for." Xiaoji let out a bitter, hollow laugh. His hands, which had been clutching the carriage window so tightly, went limp and fell to his sides. He stumbled backward, turning to stagger down the alley. After walking a dozen steps, he mumbled softly, his voice barely audible, "In this life, you're healthy and happy. You've found someone who truly loves you. That's good, it's really good, Jiao Jiao. For this alone, my second chance at life has been worth it." With that, Xiaoji disappeared into the depths of the alley. I thought that one day, I might run into him again somewhere. But I never expected that this would be the last time I would ever see him, the last time anyone would ever see him. No one ever knew where he went. On the day my brother got married, I saw Shu Rong. She was extremely thin and gaunt, her once beautiful face now haggard and worn. The floral jacket she was wearing looked like a bunch of fake flowers clumsily pinned to a dead branch. We passed each other in the covered corridor. Neither of us said a word. We just walked past each other, as if we had never known each other at all. That winter, Shu Rong committed suicide by swallowing gold, before she died. She begged my father to set concubine Yarrow free. She also left all her dowry and all the money Xiaoji had ever given her to her mother. After Shu Rong's death, the Marquisess of Boyang refused to let her be buried in the Xiao family's ancestral tomb. Shu Rong left me a letter. There was only one sentence written on it: if I could do it all over again, I would make the same choice, because it was the best choice I could have made. I burned the letter. 18. My brother and Princess Nanping were living a happy life together. By the time Song Shiqing and I got married, Nanping was already 3 months pregnant. She stood at the door, wringing her hands nervously as she looked at Song Shiqing. Her voice was soft and tentative. "Brother, congratulations." After saying it, she glanced anxiously at me, afraid that Song Shiqing would ignore her as he had in the past. "Thanks," Song Shiqing said, handing her a red envelope filled with money. Nanping's face lit up with joy. She clutched the envelope tightly, beaming at him. "Thank you, brother," Song Shiqing muttered under his breath, just loud enough for her to hear. "It's for my nephew." Nanping laughed even harder. The wedding ceremony was long and tedious. By the end of the day, I was so exhausted I could barely breathe. I asked Song Shiqing to help me take off my phoenix crown and rub my sore shoulders. He grinned, his fingers pressing gently into my muscles. "How's that, my lady? Does this strength suit you?" "It's passable," I said, pretending to be indifferent. "You still have room for improvement, Lord Song." Song Shiqing leaned in, his warm breath tickling my ear. "How about we eat something first, then I can give you a proper massage later, slow and thorough." My face turned bright red. I turned to glare at him. "Song Shiqing, have you no shame?" Song Shiqing looked utterly confused. What was shameless about that? "What are you thinking about to make your face so red?" I pinched his arm hard. He burst out laughing, doubling over in feigned pain. "Oh, my wife really knows how to pinch."